Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to CarMiZa. If you're not familiar with the name Miza, M-I-Z-A, it's Mickney is my last name, so that's the M-I, and Z-A is for Zausmer. Earl Zausmer, the original owner of this car. Today is Wednesday, August 31st, 2022. And the subject of this video is Dynamat prep. So the last video I posted was everything to do about the OEM wiring and getting that sorted and routed and cleaned up. What I've done since then is kind of undid the mounting of the wiring, if you will. So if you look down here, these covers are now off. I've got the battery out. And effectively, I am moving it out of the way to prepare for Dynamat. Okay, so that again is the purpose of this whole video, is to talk about everything I did to prepare for Dynamat. The car is now 100% ready to start Dynamatting. Since I've did the OEM wiring video to get to this point, and everything I'm going to discuss in this video took me 57 hours so far. So first thing I want to describe is basically the prep. I had to remove the old Dynamat. My garbage man is probably still pissed at me because of how much Dynamat I pulled out of the car. This had the original Dynamat 6260 series, the Super Dynamat. There was also Dynamat Light. There was a bunch of different versions of Dynamat in the car that Earl and Henry put in back in 1994. So coming up on 30 years, that was the asphalt-based product, and some of it was still sticking, but for the majority of it, it was kind of peeling and falling off. So I made a decision at that point, once I got the car kind of stripped down, to remove all the old Dynamat, clean the entire car, every surface, and I got it, it's squeaky clean, basically. This took an incredible amount of time to remove all the old Dynamat from inside the doors, from all over the car, and get the car ready. So that was one of the first things I did. The next thing I did, you'll notice, obviously, we've got the baffles are prepared. Those are all ready to go for the Bowers & Wilkins Matrix 801. They're a 13-inch woofer. So once I completed the steel, it was bare metal. As you can see, everything gray there is epoxy primer. So epoxy primer was applied to not only the kick panel areas where there was bare metal, but anywhere else in the car that I found that had bare metal. So I went through and basically just made sure there was no bare metal. Even though I'm going to Dynamat over the top of it, I didn't want anything to corrode later. This area had been modified. There's a new metal floor in there for the dual batteries that were in the car. And so I want to do epoxy primer that whole area. This hump right here where the back seat goes, that was all kind of scratched up and everything. So again, I didn't want any bare metal to possibly corrode. So that got taken care of. Next, you'll notice in the kick panel areas and along the kind of the door opening there, I painted that area red. The reason I did that is because I want, after I'm done Dynamatting, I want everything that you're going to see to be red, even though the interior is going to go in and all of that. I'm very fussy in particular. If you're not aware, the way I'm doing the woofers and the baffles, the woofer is going to mount directly to that baffle. There will be no gasket. The intention is to intentionally couple the woofer to the car. I know a lot of people say, oh, decouple the woofer, all of that. That was one of the secrets, or kind of the magics of this car, is the woofers were mounted directly to the metal, and it really made a big difference in terms of the tactile feel, detail, impact of the bass response. So that is why the rings themselves will be painted, or are painted red. What I'm going to do is basically take a sheet of Dynamat, lay it on the floor, put the woofer over the top of it, cut out around the perimeter of the woofer, and then apply the Dynamat. So basically that baffle will all be covered with Dynamat, but where the actual woofer is going to go in will not be covered with Dynamat for that very reason. All right. One of the other things I did, you'll notice, throughout the various iterations of installations in the car, it was zapped by its fair share of stinger screws. So anywhere where there were previous holes that may have gone either through the car or into the car, I went through. I just realized, actually, I missed one. I got to get this one. I'll take care of that. I was working pretty late the other night, so I must have missed it. But you can see throughout the car, I've got a bunch of silicone spots. And that, again, is to basically cover up those old screw holes. The objective here, basically, think of this as I'm getting the car back to kind of as stock, I guess, as possible in terms of bringing it back to like ground zero, right, before I actually start the install. So that's what's going on there. Another thing I did, went a little bit crazy here and removed the entire moonroof cartridge. The objective here was to make sure I can Dynamat every single square inch of this without being interrupted and having any kind of an issue. And you'll see that I've got that carefully sitting on top of the car. This will also, what I'm going to do here when I Dynamat this is put a layered Dynamat on, put the cartridge back in, make sure everything works as far as clearance goes, take the cartridge back out, and then put the second layer of Dynamat in. So kind of gives me that flexibility because it's not that hard to get it out. By yourself, it's kind of a bear, but it's doable. So, all right, let's talk a little bit more about the doors. I'm going to go ahead and hop out. And want to show you some details on the doors. There's quite a bit of time and care taken here. So first off, one of the things that you'll notice is I've got this Sharpie line all the way around the perimeter. And the objective here was to make sure when I start Dynamatting, I'm just going to go beast mode and just cover everything, right? So I want to be careful here and make sure that I have a nice clean, crisp line that I go up against. The car is going to be getting an entire respray. And I want to make sure that when that happens, I don't pigeonhole myself and end up in a situation where we've got overspray on the Dynamat or something like that. So I basically just went in an inch, and then that gives me some room to work with. I don't think, sacrificing an inch that's not going to be Dynamatted, I don't think that's going to make a big difference in the end. So that was the first thing. The other thing that I did, I know a lot of people do whatever you guys call them, knockoff plates, cover plates, whatever. I did the same thing, even though there will be no drivers in the doors. So basically, the drivers in this car, again, will be the woofers and the kick panels, and there'll be a 4.5-inch in tweeter coaxially mounted at each end of the dash. That's it. There's nothing in the doors. But despite that, my objective there was to have the doors be as solid as possible and remove any kind of road noise that I possibly could. So if you notice both doors on that side, the knockoff plate or cover plates, whatever you want to call them, are mounted currently. So if we look at this door, I can show you a little bit more detail about this. What I did here is some threaded inserts. A little pro tip too to help you guys out. If anybody's looking to do these, I would highly encourage you to use the aluminum versions. I tried using stainless steel, because I don't want anything to corrode. And the stainless steel were a beast. I ended up breaking a couple of the tools. I bought some decent tools, but they still broke. So again, kind of a pro tip would be to stick with the aluminum, and obviously the aluminum will not corrode or rust. I want this car to be in one piece when I am long gone and in the ground. So I do not want it to corrode. The next thing I did from there was I used, as you can see over there, there is all stainless screws and washers that hold those panels on. Now those panels are also going to get a layer of Dynamat in the front and the back of each panel, okay? Additionally, with the panels, I actually have one right here I wanted to show you. So this one would go here on the driver's side. What I did is I started with ABS because it's thin, easy to work with. I can bend it. Some of these have some contours to them to meet the contours of the door. So it's easier to work with in that regard. But to me, it wasn't, super solid. Sorry, 1 second, drop my notes here. Wasn't super solid, so I wanted to do something to reinforce this. So I added a piece of 16 gauge steel to the front and the back of each of these panels. So what I ended up with is the total so there's 2 cover plates per door, a total of 8, and the overall weight is 16.4 pounds for all 8 cover plates. So they average a little over 2 pounds a piece. This, I think, is going to add a lot of again, heft to the doors, and make them more solid and reduce road noise. This metal, 16 gauge, is the equivalent of what is in the car. The car is 16 gauge steel is what they used in this car. So I've got 2 layers. So if anything, it's actually thicker than if this thing was just all one piece from the factory. Okay. Now, the other thing that's really important, I think, is functionality and serviceability. I notice a lot of installs that I see where people Dynamat the entire door and just cover the entire thing. But if you get, you know, the window regulator goes, you get one of these plastic clips. This car is 30 years old, right? This needs to be serviceable. So these panels, as you can see, takes maybe 2 minutes per door to be able to remove these panels. And that will be the case after I Dynamat. Again, the Dynamat's going to kind of roll into this hole. These panels will each be covered front and back, and then they'll be able to screw on and screw off. The screws will be accessible. In other words, they won't be covered with Dynamat. So again, I'm a big proponent of being serviceable. I think that's a really big thing. All right, basically from here, my next move with the car is going to be 2 layers of Dynamat throughout. Every single square inch of the interior is going to get 2 layers of Dynamat. One other exception too, you'll notice I did, like you can see it over on that B pillar, see that Sharpie line? I even did the same thing there just to make sure I come up against that Sharpie line, because where these door moldings fit, there is no room for Dynamat. So this lip is going to remain without Dynamat. So that again is another reason why in this area you can see I painted this, right? It wasn't painted because this is all welded. I actually felt bad covering the welds with paint because they came out so good. Again, shout out to my future son-in-law, James Abrams. Did an incredible job welding these things. These panels, you could probably lift the car by those things. It's so solid. Look at the welds up there. You can see it's just incredible. All right, so anyway, 2 layers of Dynamat. I am using Dynamat brand product. That is what was used in the car in the past, and that's what's going to go back in the car. That is, I know there's a million different products out there, and some people argue, oh, it's all the same, and that stuff's too expensive, and all of that. I'm sticking with what I know works. That product, even though it, was peeling off when I got into the car, there was a lot of it that was still stuck in the car, and I know it's going to work well. The new product is that butyl material, so I know it's going to stick well and hold up very well. I estimate it'll take about 60 hours or so to just do the Dynamat before I do anything else. After I do the Dynamat, I'm going to go through and re-secure all of the wiring. Obviously, as you can see, I intentionally have everything just kind of loose and out of my way so I can quickly work and apply the Dynamat to these clean doors. But then after that, I will go through and re-secure everything just like you saw it in the OEM video, wiring video. After that, I will be working on the audio wiring, basically just getting the wiring that's got to be run throughout the car. Again, Straight Wires is partnering with the build, with me on the build, and will be supplying all of the audio wiring for that. So one last thing, I think my timing is just right. It's despite being the end of August here, it's between 105 and 110 degrees right now here in the Phoenix area. So when applying Dynamat, I'll still use a heat gun because I really like to get it good and hot and make it stick well, but my timing is good. At least I don't have to worry about it being brutally cold or anything like that. All right, that should be it for now. I certainly appreciate you watching. If you do have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you next time after the Dynamat is complete. Take care.